I walked into the grand ballroom with a small gift in my hand, only to hear the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about fatherhood. My daughter, Olivia Parker, stood there in her white gown, her face stiff with embarrassment as she whispered, "Dad, you were never invited. Leave now." For a moment, I thought I had misheard, that she could not possibly be dismissing me from the very wedding I had built with my own sacrifices. Yet the truth was there in her eyes, cold and unflinching. I stepped back, my heart heavier than the suit I wore, and walked quietly out into the spring air. What Olivia did not know was that her perfect wedding rested entirely on the foundation of my name, my money, and my choices. Within 2 hours, everything she thought was untouchable would begin to unravel, one payment at a time. Before we continue, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if your daughter told you to leave her wedding after you paid for everything? I worked more hours than any man should just to make sure my daughter Olivia never knew what it felt like to go without. When her mother, Catherine, died of an illness that left me holding a toddler in my arms, I swore I would carry the weight of both parents. Olivia was 3 years old then, her big green eyes always asking questions, her small hand clutching mine at night because she missed the woman who had kissed her good night. From that day forward, I became both mother and father, caretaker and provider, and I never allowed myself to think of giving up. Every decision I made in business, every risk I took, every hour I worked into the dark was for Olivia Parker. When she was old enough for school, I chose the kind of education I had only ever dreamed of. Private academies with marble foyers and gleaming trophies in the hallway, the kind of schools where senators' children and doctors' heirs filled the classrooms. I wore the same pair of work boots for 3 years just to cover her tuition. When she begged to join ballet, I signed checks for lessons that cost more than my truck payment. When she outgrew dolls and wanted a laptop, I handed over the money and told her not to worry about anything. Every expense became mine to absorb, every sacrifice mine to shoulder. I built my construction company from a rusted pickup truck and a handful of tools. Over the years, it grew into Crawford & Sons. Even though there was no sons, only me and my workers, men who trusted me to put bread on their tables. I hired 30 people, paid them fair wages, and never missed payroll, even when it meant delaying my own salary. But Olivia never saw the calluses or the sleepless nights. She only saw that her needs were always met. A new car at 16, college tuition at a private university, study abroad in Italy when she decided she wanted to see the world. Each demand came with urgency, each request with the assumption that I would provide. And I did. Because I was her father. Because I loved her. I told myself she would grow up to understand that one day she would stand on her own and look back with gratitude. I imagined the moment at her wedding when she would take my hand and thank me for being there through every moment of her life. That image was what carried me through nights when my body ached from labor and my mind screamed for rest. So when I walked into the Grand Hotel ballroom that Saturday afternoon, holding a small box with a simple gold locket inside, I was not prepared for the words that cut me deeper than any wound I had ever suffered. Olivia stood in her wedding dress, her hair pinned perfectly, her face powdered into flawless beauty. And she looked at me as if I were a stranger who had wandered into the wrong room. "Dad," she said, her voice sharp, "you were never invited. Please leave now." The gift box trembled in my hands. My mouth went dry. Around us, conversations hushed, the chatter of polished guests fading as their attention turned toward the spectacle at the entrance. Men in tailored suits adjusted their cuffs but kept their eyes fixed on me. Women in glittering gowns sipped their champagne slowly, their whispers floating like daggers. My daughter's fiancé, Daniel Crawford, stepped forward, his expression smug with a kind of superiority I recognized all too well in men born into wealth. "Mr. Crawford," he said with practiced politeness, "this is a private celebration. Family only, family only." The words echoed through me like a hammer on steel. I had built her entire world, but I was not considered family enough to be present. 28 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees bandaged with my rough hands, checks written in amounts that made my own stomach tighten, reduced to an outsider at the doorway of my only child's wedding. "I paid for this," I said softly, not to embarrass her, not to shout, but because the truth demanded to be spoken. My eyes moved across the room, the white roses covering every table, the chandeliers sparkling overhead, the musicians playing in the corner, the dress on Olivia's back. Every single piece of it carried my fingerprints, my labor, my sacrifice. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Money does not make someone worthy," he said coldly, his arm slipping protectively around Olivia's waist. She nodded, her eyes refusing to meet mine. "This isn't about money, Dad. It's about fitting in. You don't belong here. Please go." Her words landed like ice water across my chest. I wanted to scream, to remind her of who I was, of the father who had given up his youth, his comfort, his own happiness so she could have this moment. Instead, I looked at her one last time, memorizing her face, the face I had kissed goodnight for years, the face I thought would always look at me with love. "You are right," I said, my voice shaking but steady enough for the silence of the room to carry it. "I do not belong." Here, I placed the gift box on a nearby table, between untouched glasses of champagne and carefully folded napkins. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. My boots struck the polished floor louder than I intended, the sound echoing as whispers returned to the crowd behind me. The walk felt endless, each step dragging the weight of nearly 3 decades of sacrifice across the floor. When I finally pushed open the heavy doors, the spring air hit me with sharp finality. Outside, the parking lot was filled with gleaming cars I would never afford. Bentleys and Maseratis lined the spaces near the entrance, while my truck sat alone in the far corner, exactly where society had always placed me. I walked toward it, the silence of the evening settling heavy around me. My chest burned, not just from the betrayal, but from the clarity that settled over me. Olivia's world had never truly been hers. It had been mine, and she had chosen to erase me from it. I unlocked the truck and slid inside, the leather seat creaking under my weight. For a long moment I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the venue doors where guests continued to arrive. They smiled, shook hands, adjusted ties, and drifted inside, unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. My phone buzzed with messages from work, from friends, from the lawyer who had been helping me with a business deal. But my attention was fixed on one number I had not dialed in years, a number that held more power than any argument I could make with words. I took a deep breath, steadied my hand, and scrolled through my contacts until I reached it. My thumb hovered over the name for only a moment before pressing down. The line rang once, then twice. A calm female voice answered on the other end. "First National Business Services. This is Margaret speaking. How may I assist you today?" "This is Richard Crawford," I said, my voice steady now in a way it had not been minutes ago. "I need to stop several payments immediately." The woman on the line spoke with calm professionalism. "Of course, Mr. Crawford, can you provide your account number and verification details?" I rattled off the numbers from memory, each one etched into me after decades of running my business. My voice did not waver. This was not a whim or an impulsive act of anger. It was a decision carved from years of silent sacrifice and a moment of pure betrayal. I see a series of large transactions processed within the past 30 days, Margaret said, her keyboard clacking faintly in the background. Can you specify which you would like to stop? All wedding-related payments, I said firmly. The venue rental, catering, floral arrangements, photography, music services, linens, transportation. Every last one of them. There was a pause on the other end. Sir, these are significant amounts. Are you absolutely certain? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. She did not question me again. Within minutes, confirmation numbers rolled in, each representing a severed artery of the event that had just cast me out. The stop payments are in effect. Vendors will be notified by their banks within the hour. Is there anything else, Mr. Crawford? That will do, I said. Thank you. When the call ended, silence filled the truck. The dashboard clock showed 3:42 p.m. guests were still arriving in glittering gowns, the sound of laughter spilling from the venue doors. They had no idea the foundation beneath their celebration had just been pulled out. I leaned back in my seat and waited. It began with the florist. Through the tall windows, I saw a woman in a dark blazer enter with two assistants carrying large plastic bins. She moved quickly, directly toward the altar arrangement at the front of the ballroom. At first, the guests assumed she was part of the staff adjusting the decor. But confusion spread as she began pulling the orchids from their vases, roots and all, and placing them into the bins. Olivia spotted her and hurried across the floor, her gown sweeping behind her. "Excuse me," she said, smiling tightly. "We are in the middle of the ceremony preparations. Whatever you need can wait until later." The florist straightened, holding a spray of white orchids in her hands. "Ma'am, payment authorization for these arrangements was canceled 40 minutes ago. I need to collect them now." The color drained from Olivia's face. "That's impossible. Everything was paid weeks ago. The account holder, Richard Crawford, revoked authorization directly. I have written approval to remove our property." Without hesitation, her assistants began dismantling centerpieces from the guest tables. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Guests turned in their seats, watching the arrangements disappear one by one. A photographer froze mid-shot, his camera lowering slowly as the spectacle unfolded. Daniel pushed his way forward, his voice sharp. "This is outrageous. You cannot just tear apart a wedding in progress." The florist remained calm. "Our contract clearly states that canceled payments void our obligations. These flowers belong to Evergreen Florals. We are reclaiming them." Daniel's jaw tightened. But before he could respond, the side doors opened again. This time, a catering crew wheeled in empty carts, their expressions grim. The lead man, Marcus, approached Olivia with a clipboard in his hand. "Mrs. Crawford," he said carefully, "I regret to inform you that payment authorization for catering was revoked at 4:15. We need to protect our equipment and remaining food service immediately." Olivia blinked in disbelief. "No, that's not possible. You've already been paid." "Not anymore," Marcus said. He signaled to his team, who began covering serving stations with white cloths. Platters of appetizers vanished into carts, champagne bottles were capped and rolled away, and waiters carried trays out the side doors. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread drifted through the air, fading like a cruel reminder of what had been promised. Guests began to murmur louder now. shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The string quartet faltered as one of their members whispered with the venue staff at the edge of the stage. Moments later, the music stopped altogether as they began packing their instruments into hard black cases. Daniel's voice rose above the chaos. "Stop this immediately. We will resolve the payments." The caterer shook his head. "Without authorization, we cannot continue service. This is standard procedure." He turned away, his staff moving with silent efficiency to strip the hall of its elegance. Olivia turned toward her guests, her composure cracking. "There has been a mistake, everyone. Please, enjoy yourselves. This will be resolved quickly." But her voice wavered, and the guests did not look reassured. At the far side of the room, the lighting technician shut down his console. Colored lights faded, leaving only the stark glow of chandeliers. The speakers popped as the sound system disconnected, plunging the room into an uneasy quiet, broken only by the rustle of dismantled flowers and the clatter of dishes being removed. I watched all of it unfold from the safety of my truck, the venue's wide windows offering a perfect view of the unraveling. I did not smile. This was not about amusement. It was about justice. Inside, Olivia clutched Daniel's arm, her voice shrill. "Do something. Fix this." Daniel strode across the room to confront the venue coordinator, a young woman with a headset pressed against her ear. "What is happening here? Why are all the services shutting down?" The coordinator's expression was grim as she ended her call and turned to face him. "Sir, I just spoke with accounting. All payments for this event originated from a single account under Richard Crawford. That account holder has revoked authorization for every transaction. Without reinstatement, none of these vendors are obligated to continue." A hush fell across the ballroom, heavier than any silence before. Guests turned in their seats, eyes wide, whispers sharp. Olivia's face went pale, her lips trembling. She shook her head slowly, disbelief written across every feature. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't. He couldn't, but I had." I sat in my truck and watched the ballroom through the wide windows, the once elegant scene unraveling piece by piece as if my entire lifetime of sacrifice were being peeled back and shown for what it really was. A performance built on the shoulders of one man's work and one man's devotion. And as I watched Olivia's face pale and Daniel's anger flare, I could not stop my mind from pulling me backward through the years to all the choices that had brought us to this moment. I thought of the day I wrote the first tuition check for Riverside Academy, Audace Down, place filled with the children of lawyers and surgeons and executives, and how I had to delay payroll for a week to make sure the check cleared because I believed that my daughter deserved to stand among the elite, even if it meant my men had to wait for their wages while I scrambled to find a way to cover the gap. And I remembered Olivia's little voice at 6 years old when she came home holding a star from her teacher that said, "Excellent reader." And she said, "Daddy, did I make you proud?" I had lifted her up, kissed her cheek, and told her she made me proud every single day, never mentioning the fact that I was behind on my mortgage so she could sit in those classrooms. When she was 8, she wanted ballet, and I paid for lessons in a studio with mirrored walls and instructors who charged more per month than I made in a week when I first started my business. And I sat through recitals clapping until my hands ached while my clothes smelled of sawdust and sweat because I came straight from the job site. At 16, when she begged me for a car, I brought home a Honda Civic, reliable and safe, and she smiled and hugged me at first. But within months she was sulking, saying all her friends drove BMWs, that the Civic was embarrassing. And though it stung, I traded it in 2 years later for the BMW she wanted, because I told myself it was just part of being a father, just part of making her life easier than mine had ever been. College years were worse. Northwestern was her dream, and I made it happen even when the numbers made no sense. $52,000 a year for tuition, another $15,000 for housing. Then came sorority dues, spring breaks in Cancun, study programs in Florence and Milan. Every one of them presented to me as if they were necessities, as if she would fall behind in life without them. I remember her voice over the phone junior year, bright and casual, saying, "Dad, I need $3,000 for this business fraternity trip. It's essential for networking." And I wired it the same day, even though I had to cancel an equipment order for a construction project that nearly cost me a client. My office walls filled with overdue notices. But her life remained untouched, flowing smoothly from one luxury to the next. After graduation came Daniel, with his perfect teeth and his father's wealth. And Olivia began to look at me differently. At Christmas dinners, she asked me to wear polished shoes instead of my work boots, to buy suits that matched the family she was trying to impress, and I saw in her eyes that the man who had given her everything was now the man she was ashamed of. But I endured it. I endured it because I thought love would win out in the end, that somewhere deep inside she remembered the bedtime stories, the times I carried her to bed when she fell asleep on the couch, the days I worked until midnight just to afford the smile she wore at school dances. Now, as I watched the florist wheel out the last of the orchids and the caterer roll carts through the door, I saw the truth clearer than ever. My love had been translated into numbers on invoices and payments processed through accounts that none of them understood. And when I chose to pull those numbers back, the facade they had built collapsed instantly. Guests murmured nervously, the laughter gone, their eyes darting between Olivia and Daniel, waiting for someone to explain why their champagne was gone, why the music had stopped, why the tables were stripped bare. Olivia's hands trembled as she fumbled with her phone, her head swiveling as if she could make sense of the madness by sheer will. She pressed the phone to her ear, her face tight, and I felt my pocket vibrate. Her name lit up the screen, Olivia Parker, the same name that had been scribbled in crayon letters on my Father's Day cards years ago. And I let it ring. I wanted her to sit with the silence, to feel the helplessness I had carried for years as she treated me like a bank account rather than a man. The phone went quiet, then buzzed again, and again. By the fourth call, I could see her pacing near the ballroom doors, her dress trailing behind her like a flag of surrender, her mouth forming words I could not hear, but knew were filled with panic. While she called, I thought about the second car I had bought her at 19, the BMW 320i she insisted she needed to fit in with her classmates, the way she had smiled when she first drove it off the lot, barely thanking me before speeding away with her friends. I thought about the apartment in Chicago I had covered after graduation, $2,800 a month for 3 years, plus utilities, plus the credit card balances I cleared when she overspent, telling myself she just needed time to get on her feet. Time, I realized now, that she had never intended to use for independence. Time she had wasted on spa treatments, designer clothing, nights out in clubs where the bills rivaled a week's payroll for my men. Every memory was a ledger, every smile bought and paid for with my sweat, and every ungrateful word etched into me like a scar. Her calls did not stop. 10 times, then 12, her name flashing again and again on my screen. Guests were leaving their seats now, gathering near the exits, whispering to each other, pulling out their own phones to check accounts, to post on social media, to capture the collapse of a wedding that had been touted as the event of the year. Daniel stood rigid, jaw tight, his hand clamped around Olivia's arm, as if he could hold the situation together by force alone. She pulled away, tears streaking down her face, pressing the phone to her ear once more. The 15th call buzzed through my truck, and this time I let it ring a little longer, watching her mouth form the word "please" across the distance. I picked it up and held it against my ear, waiting until her frantic breathing filled the silence. "Hello, Olivia," I said at last, my voice calm, cold, and deliberate. For a moment, all I could hear was her frantic breathing. Then her words tumbled out in a rush, sharp and panicked, spilling over one another. "Dad, finally you answered. What have you done? Everything is falling apart. The flowers are gone, the food is gone, people are staring at me, Daniel's family is demanding answers. You have to fix this right now." I let her talk, let her desperation spill into the silence between us. And when she paused for air, I spoke with the steady tone of a man who had spent 25 years carrying the weight of someone else's expectations. "I did not break anything, Olivia. I simply stopped paying for things that were never mine to enjoy. What you are experiencing is not destruction. It is reality." Her voice rose, shrill with disbelief. "Reality? This is my wedding day. You ruined it. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Everyone is looking at me like I am some kind of joke. Daniel's family is furious. People are leaving. You destroyed everything." I closed my eyes and breathed slowly, remembering the little girl who once tugged at my sleeve and begged me to push her higher on the swing. That little girl had been replaced by a woman who saw me not as a father, but as a bank account. "Do you know how much I have spent on you, Olivia? Take a guess. Humor me." She hesitated, caught off guard by the question. I don't know. Maybe 50,000 over the years." A bitter laugh escaped me, low and sharp. 50,000 would not cover 1 year at Northwestern. I have spent close to $1 million over 28 years. Private school tuition from first grade through high school. 4 years at a private university. Study abroad in Italy. Sorority dues. Spring break trips, new cars, apartments, clothes, electronics, your wedding dress. Every flower you are now watching walk out the door. Every single thing you demanded, I provided. Nearly $1 million, Olivia. And you have never once said thank you. There was silence on the other end, except for the muffled sound of voices around her, the chaos of a wedding unraveling. When she spoke again, her voice cracked, the confidence bleeding out of it. "I never asked you to keep track like that. You are my father. It was your job to provide for me." Her words hit like a hammer, but I refused to let them bend me. It was my job to love you, to raise you, to teach you how to stand on your own 2 feet. It was not my job to fund your entire existence while you disrespected me in front of the very people I made sacrifices to impress. Today you looked me in the eye and told me I did not belong at the wedding I paid for. That was the moment you crossed a line you cannot uncross. "Dad, I did not mean it like that," she said quickly, her tone shifting to pleading. It was the pressure, the nerves, Daniel's family, everyone watching. I just wanted it to look perfect. "I never meant to hurt. You did not just hurt me," I replied. "You humiliated me. You showed the world that your father, the man who has given everything for you, was disposable, that he was unworthy to stand in the room while his daughter took vows built on his money. And you expect me to fix this for you?" She was crying now, her words stumbling. "I do not know what else to do. Daniel is furious. His parents are asking questions I cannot answer. The vendors are demanding money. People are leaving, and everyone is staring at me like I am worthless. Please, Dad, please help me." I let her cry for a while before I spoke again. My voice was steel. If you want my help, things will change. There will be conditions. No more blind support. No more unquestioned transfers. No more treating me like an endless resource. From this moment on, every dollar is accounted for, every demand justified, every conversation honest. If you want a relationship with me, it will be built on respect, not entitlement. Her sobbing grew louder. I will do anything. Please, just do not leave me like this. Everyone is watching me fall apart. I cannot do this without you. Perhaps it is time you learn how to do exactly that, I said. But you will get one chance, Olivia. One, and you will earn it. You will earn my respect again, not with words, not with apologies, but with action. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice breaking completely. I stared at the dashboard, my reflection faint in the glass, the lines on my face carved by years of labor and disappointment. I want you to understand what it means to stand on your own. For now, you will receive nothing until you can prove that you are capable of living without me funding your life. I will not destroy you, but I will not enable you any longer. The first lesson begins tonight. There was silence, heavy and suffocating. Then a whisper. I understand. I ended the call and sat there, my heart pounding in my chest. Outside, the venue continued to unravel. Vans lined up at the service entrance, vendors moving quickly to reclaim what was theirs. Guests spilled out onto the lawn, muttering under their breath, adjusting shawls and tuxedos, slipping away to avoid the embarrassment of staying. Through the glass doors, I caught one last glimpse of Olivia, her face streaked with makeup, her gown sagging under the weight of humiliation. Daniel standing beside her, with fury in his eyes. I reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a stack of old receipts, invoices, and records I had kept over the years. They were my history, my ledger of sacrifice, every dollar and every hour I had poured into her life. For decades I had kept them quietly, tucked away as if the proof of my devotion were something shameful. But now I understood their true value. They were not just records. They were evidence. I spread the papers across the passenger seat, my fingers tracing the faded ink of tuition payments, bank transfers, car leases, and credit card bills. A story was written in those numbers, a story Olivia had ignored, but the world would soon see. I realized then that love alone would not teach her what she needed to learn. Love had spoiled her. Love had blinded her. What she needed now was accountability, and accountability required law. I picked up my phone again, scrolling past her name, past the missed calls and frantic voicemails, until I reached another number. Margaret Whitfield, the attorney who had once helped me negotiate a construction contract dispute. She was sharp, relentless, and precise, exactly the kind of ally I needed. My thumb hovered over her name, and I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the decision. It was time to stop being just a father. It was time to start being a man who demanded justice. The papers scattered across the passenger seat told the story better than I ever could with words. Receipts for ballet lessons, tuition statements from Riverside Academy, dormitory contracts from Northwestern, wire transfers to European banks for study abroad programs, lease agreements for cars, credit card bills littered with designer purchases. It was all there. Not just a lifetime of fatherhood, but a ledger of sacrifice, the financial backbone of Olivia's entire existence. For years I had tucked them away as proof for myself that the struggle had been worth it. Now they would become something else. Ammunition. I picked up my phone and scrolled to the contact I had avoided for years except in matters of business. Margaret Whitfield, attorney at law. Margaret had once helped me resolve a contractual dispute when a developer tried to stiff my construction company on a project. She had been surgical, precise, and merciless, qualities I had admired. If anyone could transform my personal heartbreak into a professional reckoning, it was her. The line rang twice before she answered, her clipped voice steady as ever. Margaret Whitfield. Margaret, it is Richard Crawford. I need to see you. Today. It is not business, but it will need to be handled like business. She paused for only a moment, and I could almost hear her mind turning. I can clear my evening. Bring whatever documentation you have. My office at 7. By the time I hung up, the parking lot outside the venue was nearly empty. Guests had fled the humiliation, vendors had carried out their reclaimed goods, and Olivia stood inside the ballroom's open doors like a porcelain figure cracked down the middle. Daniel's arm was rigid at her side, his lips pressed into a hard line. I did not wait to see more. I started the engine and drove away, the roar of the truck cutting through the silence I left behind. At exactly 7, I walked into Whitfield and Associates, the quiet hum of professionalism greeting me like an old ally. Margaret met me in the conference room, her silver hair tied neatly, her suit as sharp as the look in her eyes. "Richard," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Tell me what happened." I spread the folders across the polished mahogany table. The room was lined with shelves of legal volumes, their spines worn from decades of battles fought and won. Margaret studied me for a moment before opening the first folder. Her eyes flicked over the documents with the focus of a surgeon examining an X-ray. "For 28 years, I began, my voice low but steady. I gave Olivia everything. Private schools, college, cars, housing, travel. Nearly $1 million in total. I thought it was love. I thought it was building her future. Today she told me I did not belong at her wedding, the very wedding I paid for entirely. I stopped the payments. The event collapsed. Now I want her to face what she has avoided her whole life. The true cost of her entitlement." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line as she flipped through page after page. "Your record-keeping is exceptional," she said. "These are thorough. Bank transfers, receipts, invoices. This could easily be converted into a financial statement, the kind of documentation that carries weight in court." She tapped her pen against one page, a tuition statement from Northwestern. "This is not just generosity. This could be reclassified as recoverable debt." I leaned forward. "That is exactly what I want. I do not want vengeance. I want accountability. If Olivia has to face the financial reality of what I have provided, maybe she will finally understand the value of sacrifice." Margaret nodded slowly. "We have a few legal avenues. One, we can reclassify these as loans retroactively. The sheer consistency and volume works in your favor. 2, we can issue a formal demand letter with 30 days to respond. If she refuses, we escalate to civil proceedings. The amount involved," she glanced at the totals I had calculated, "is extraordinary. Nearly $1 million. That is more than enough to gain leverage." She outlined the steps methodically. A demand letter drafted on official letterhead, a breakdown of every expense with supporting documentation, a deadline for repayment, and a clear warning of legal consequences for failure. It would transform this from a family quarrel into a contractual dispute, professional and undeniable. By 11 that night, the documents were prepared. Thick folders, each tabbed and organized, sat neatly on the table. At the top was the demand letter itself, It was written in language sharp enough to cut through arrogance. Repayment of $962,000 within 30 days or legal proceedings would begin. Margaret closed the folder and slid it toward me. A courier can deliver this tomorrow. Signature required. That way, there is a record that she received it. Once she holds this in her hands, she will understand this is no longer emotional. This is business, I thanked her, shaking her hand with a gratitude sharper than words. Walking out of her office, the night air felt different, cold, yes, but also clean. For the first time in years, I was not drowning in the endless tide of Olivia's demands. I was steering it. The following afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from the courier service. Mr. Crawford, the documents were delivered to the Grand Denver Hotel, Suite 1423. Signed by Olivia Parker at 2:15 p.m., delivery complete. I hung up slowly, picturing the scene. Olivia sitting on a hotel bed, her gown draped across a chair, her eyes swollen from crying, Daniel pacing like a caged animal. A knock at the door. A man in a suit handing over an envelope stamped with the weight of law. I imagined the confusion on her face as she opened it, the disbelief turning to horror as her eyes scanned the figures. $962,000. 30 days. I did not have to wait long for the aftermath. At 2:47 p.m., my phone began to buzz. Olivia's name lit up the screen, again and again. The calls came rapid, her panic leaking into the voicemails she left. The first one was sharp with denial. Dad, this cannot be real. This has to be a mistake. You cannot be serious. The second was filled with anger. $900,000? You never said any of that was a loan. You cannot do this to me. The third trembled with fear. Please, Dad. Daniel's family is asking questions I cannot answer. They are furious. I do not know what to tell them. Call me back, please. By the fourth, her voice cracked. I do not understand how everything went so wrong so fast. Please, I need you. I sat in my office at home, the folders neatly stacked on my desk, the weight of 28 years distilled into numbers and evidence. For once, I did not feel powerless. Olivia had made her choice when she told me I did not belong. Now, she would learn what belonging had cost. It was no longer just about being her father. It was about being a man who demanded justice. The next morning began with silence. No messages from Olivia, no frantic calls, just the dull hum of my coffee machine and the familiar creak of my house settling into the day. For a brief moment, I thought maybe she had finally accepted the consequences. But by noon, the storm began. Rachel, my assistant at Crawford & Sons, knocked on my office door with worry on her face. Mr. Crawford, I think you should see this. She handed me her tablet, the screen glowing with a Facebook post that already had hundreds of shares. Olivia's wedding photo filled the screen, her in her white gown, Daniel beaming at her side, the kind of picture that looked timeless until you read the words beneath it. Her caption dripped with venom. My father humiliated me on my wedding day. He destroyed everything out of spite and is now demanding nearly $1 million from his only daughter. No bride should endure what I endured. Please share this so no one else suffers at the hands of a cruel and bitter man. Hundreds of comments flooded beneath. People I had never met writing about me as though they knew me. What kind of father sues his daughter? Akta? Money must have mattered more to him than family. Disgraceful. She deserves better. Some even tagged local business owners and community figures I had known for years. I clenched my jaw, scrolling further. Daniel's influence was obvious. The Andersons, his parents, moved in powerful circles in Denver. Their name carried weight in country clubs, charity boards, and professional organizations. And now that weight was being used to crush me. By mid-afternoon, my phone started ringing. Bob Hernandez from the Rotary Club. Tom Jacobs, a contractor I had partnered with on municipal projects. Even the mayor's office left a message asking if the allegations were true. Olivia and Daniel were playing their game well, using social pressure, gossip, and manipulation to paint me as unstable. But what they had underestimated was my preparation. They had sentiment. I had evidence. At 6 that evening, I made my calls. The first was to the Denver Business Journal. I told the editor directly, "I have 28 years of documentation showing nearly $1 million in financial support for my daughter. I am prepared to make it public." His silence lasted a moment before he said, "If you can back it up, Mr. Crawford, this is bigger than gossip. Send what you have." Next, I called 3 local reporters I trusted from past projects. I offered them full access to my files, bank transfers, tuition statements, car leases, credit card bills. Cold, undeniable numbers. By 8 that night, Margaret Whitfield had polished the records into a presentable package. Spreadsheets broken down by year, category, and amount, paired with photographs of Olivia at every stage of her life, smiling in her ballet costume, standing next to her first car, posing in Italy during her study abroad. Each image paired with the price tag I had carried. The following morning, at exactly 9, I published everything myself. My company's website and social media pages displayed a headline in bold letters: 28 years of sacrifice. The real cost of raising Olivia Parker. Beneath it were the facts: $410,000 in education, $75,000 in vehicles, $125,000 in housing, $180,000 in personal expenses, $147,000 for the wedding, nearly $1 million in total, documented, verified, undeniable. Within hours, the narrative shifted. Comments that once condemned me now marveled at the scale of my sacrifice. He spent almost $1 million, and she threw him out of her wedding. I spend $15,000 a year for my son's college, and it nearly kills me. I cannot imagine $52,000 every single year. This man deserves respect, not slander. My phone rang again, but this time the voices were different. Bob Hernandez. "Richard, I owe you an apology. I read the records. No wonder you drew the line. That girl took advantage of you, Tom Jacobs. My daughter's tuition is killing me. Seeing what you covered for Olivia, you're a better man than most. Even the mayor's office called back. Not with suspicion, but with sympathy. We stand with you, Mr. Crawford. Financial responsibility is something families should teach, not exploit." Meanwhile, Olivia's post began to collapse under the weight of the truth. Screenshots of my bank statements circulated faster than her words. People quoted my figures directly, adding their own outrage. He paid $8,200 for her summer in Italy. She should be ashamed. 3 different cars, and she still disrespected him. This is not cruelty. This is accountability. By noon, local news stations were covering the story. One anchor called it a cautionary tale of entitlement and sacrifice. Another framed it as the cost of enabling ungrateful children. Cameras turned toward me now, not as a villain, but as a symbol of hard work taken for granted. Inside their hotel suite, Olivia and Daniel must have been watching the tide turn against them. I could imagine Olivia scrolling furiously, her perfect wedding photo now buried under comments calling her spoiled, entitled, and cruel. Daniel's jaw clenching as he realized his family name was being dragged through the mud alongside hers. At 3 in the afternoon, a message from Olivia appeared on my phone. "Dad, please take down those records. People are saying terrible things about us. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it without response." The storm had reversed. The community I had built over decades, contractors, business partners, neighbors, stood with me. Olivia's attempts to bury me had unearthed the truth she had never wanted to face. But as the tide shifted, I heard from a source I did not expect. A discreet call from a mutual acquaintance in Daniel's social circle. His voice was low, cautious, but the words struck like a hammer. "Richard, Daniel's parents are starting to question the marriage itself. They are saying their son walked into a financial disaster he did not agree to. They are asking whether an annulment would be possible." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it sinking in. Olivia had thought she could erase me from her life and build a new one on Daniel's arm. But now, the very family she had chosen over me was preparing to cut her loose. The call came early on a gray Wednesday morning. Daniel's father, Ethan Crawford, was a man whose words carried the same weight as contracts, and those words had reached Daniel with all the subtlety of a gavel strike. The Anderson-Crawford family would not be dragged down by scandal. Their son had to protect his name, his finances, and his future. I did not need to be in the room to know how that conversation went. I could imagine Daniel's jaw tightening, his eyes avoiding Olivia's, as he folded shirts into a suitcase with mechanical precision. His silence more brutal than any shouting match. Olivia's texts started at 7:14 a.m. "Dad, please, Daniel is upset. He says his family thinks this is financial fraud. You have to fix this. By 8:30, another arrived. Dad, he is talking about leaving. Please call me. Please stop this before it is too late." At 9:12, a longer one, fractured with desperation. "Daniel's parents want him to annul the marriage. They say I deceived him. They say I married into money while hiding debt." I did not even know what to say. "He is packing, Dad. He is really packing." I did not respond. I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee cooling beside me, the folder of documents open once again. Every receipt was a reminder of how many chances I had given her. Every tuition statement a testimony to what had been stolen from me without gratitude. She had chosen Daniel's world over mine, and now that world was discarding her like an inconvenience. By noon, Daniel was gone. I would learn the details later, but the picture was clear enough. He left the hotel with his suitcase in hand, his mother waiting downstairs with the family car. He did not look back when Olivia called after him. He did not pause when she grabbed his sleeve, begging. He did not even soften when she whispered, "Please, you are all I have left." His only words before the elevator doors closed were cold, final. "Call your father. He is the only one who will tolerate this mess." The message she sent me that afternoon was shorter, stripped of all the defiance that once colored her tone. "Dad, he is gone. I have nothing. I do not know what to do. Please answer." For the first time in years, she was telling the truth. She had nothing. No husband to lean on, no in-laws to hide behind, no friends willing to cover her debts. Her calls increased as daylight faded, each one more desperate than the last. By 6 in the evening, she had called 22 times. By 8, she had left 6 voicemails, her voice unraveling further each time. The first was still sharp with anger. "Dad, this is insane. You cannot do this to your own daughter." The second carried panic. "Everyone is gone. Daniel's family cut me off. They say I lied to them. Please, you cannot leave me like this, the third was sobbing. I have no money for the hotel. I cannot even pay for dinner tonight. I am sitting here alone, Dad. Please pick up the last one, was a whisper, barely audible through her tears. I am sorry. I am so sorry for everything. Please, I need you. Please answer. I let the phone buzz against the table one more time before finally picking it up. My thumb pressed the green icon, and I lifted it to my ear, my voice calm and steady when I spoke. Olivia. She gasped with relief, her words tumbling out so fast I could barely follow. Dad. Thank God. I did not know what else to do. Daniel is gone. His family will not speak to me. Everyone is gone. Please, please help me. I cannot do this alone. I have nothing. I cannot even pay for this room tonight. I need you. I did not interrupt her. I let her pour every ounce of panic into the line until her words collapsed into sobs. When the silence stretched, I finally spoke. You are right about one thing. You have nothing. That is the first honest truth you have admitted in years. Her sobs quieted, her breathing sharp against the speaker. Dad, please. I know I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But you cannot just leave me like this. I will change. I will do anything. Just tell me what to do. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the documents spread before me, the financial story of her life. If I help you, Olivia, it will be under strict conditions. There will be no more entitlement, no more handouts, no more lies. You will listen, and you will obey the rules I set, or you will be entirely on your own. Yes, she said quickly, desperation dripping from her voice. Anything, Dad. I swear. Just tell me. You will find employment within 2 weeks, I said firmly. I do not care if it is waiting tables or cleaning hotel rooms. Pride is a luxury you can no longer afford. You will work. I will, she said, almost tripping over the words. You will not ask me for a single dollar for 6 months. You will survive on what you earn. No more credit cards, no more hidden expenses. You live within your means, or you do not live with my support at all. I promise. I can do that. We will speak once a week, as 2 adults, not as a dependent child begging her father for money. You will tell me the truth. And if I catch you lying again, even once, it ends. There was silence on the other end, broken only by a soft sob. Yes, Dad. I understand. I exhaled slowly, my voice steady. I will transfer $1,000 to your account tonight. That will cover a week in that hotel and enough for groceries. After that, you are on your own. Do not ask me for more, Olivia. Earn it. Her relief came in a rush of tears. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. I know I do not deserve this. But thank you. I will not let you down. I ended the call. Staring at the transfer screen on my phone, my thumb hovered for a long moment before pressing send. The money left my account, a fraction compared to the hundreds of thousands before it. But this time, it came with something more valuable than cash. Conditions, rules, boundaries. For the first time in her life, Olivia would not just receive. She would have to prove. The next morning she called again, not to beg for more money, but to tell me she had applied for jobs. Her voice was brittle, thin, like glass that could shatter at any moment. But there was something different too. Resolve. I filled out 3 applications today, Dad. Hotel receptionist, coffee shop, a retail store downtown. They said they would call me back for interviews. She was speaking like someone who had never done it before, because she hadn't. In 28 years, Olivia had never once earned her own living. I listened quietly, offering no congratulations, no comfort. Good. Do not stop. Keep applying until one says yes. 3 days later, she called again. This time her voice cracked with humiliation. They hired me at a diner, Dad. A diner. I start Monday. She paused, waiting for me to respond, waiting for me to rescue her from the embarrassment of carrying plates instead of champagne flutes. But I stayed silent, and eventually she whispered, I know you were disappointed. But I will go. I will do it. I wasn't disappointed. I was strangely proud. She just couldn't hear it in my silence. That first week at the diner nearly broke her. She worked double shifts, wiping tables, carrying greasy plates, balancing trays of food for businessmen who probably made in an hour what she earned in a day. She called me every night, her voice exhausted but edged with something new. Honesty. My feet ache. I smell like coffee and bacon all the time. A customer snapped his fingers at me like I was nothing. She did not ask for sympathy. She just said it, raw and unvarnished, as if she finally understood the labor that had paid for every comfort of her former life. I did not tell her that I drove by once that week, parking my truck across the street from the diner. I saw her through the glass window, her hair tied back, her once perfect nails chipped from scrubbing, her smile tight as she refilled a customer's cup. No one in that diner knew she had been a bride in a $1,000 gown just weeks before. No one knew she had once dismissed her father from a ballroom filled with orchids. To them, she was just another server, hustling to keep up with the pace. The following week, the humiliation spread beyond the diner walls. Olivia texted me late one night. Dad, 2 girls I knew from college came in today. They laughed when they saw me in the uniform. They asked if I'd been cut off. I didn't know what to say. I just kept smiling. I stared at her words for a long time before replying with only 2. Keep going. Because this was the lesson she needed. The friends who once celebrated her parties were gone now, unwilling to stand beside her when the bills came due. The man who once promised her forever had walked away the moment accountability entered the room. All she had left was the dignity she could build with her own hands, one shift at a time. By the 3rd week, Olivia's tone had shifted. Less sobbing, more reflection. One night, she called me after a 10-hour day, her voice hoarse. Dad, do you remember when I begged you for that BMW at 19? I told you everyone else had one and the Honda wasn't enough. I drove home tonight in the bus, smelling like onions. And I thought about how ungrateful I was. That Honda was the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me safe wheels and I threw it back in your face. I am sorry, her words caught me off guard. For years I had waited to hear those 2 words. I'm sorry. And though they were late, though they were born of desperation, they still landed with the weight of sincerity. I did not tell her how much I had longed for them. I just said, keep working. Keep learning. A month passed, and Olivia had kept every condition. No requests for money, no excuses. Her paychecks barely covered the hotel and groceries, but she stretched them with care I had never seen from her before. She skipped luxuries, wore the same uniform every day, and called me once a week as promised. Each time, her words held less entitlement and more humility. But it was not until week 5 that she broke in a different way. She called late one night, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. Dad, I need to tell you something. Not because I want money, not because I want anything. I just need you to hear it. I waited, silent as she inhaled shakily. I was wrong. About everything. About treating you like a wallet instead of a father. About acting like your sacrifices were just your job. About choosing Daniel's family over you. I see it now. Every dollar was your time, your sweat, your life. And I treated it like it was owed to me. I humiliated you at the one moment you should have been honored most. I made you feel small when you were the only reason I ever felt big. And I am ashamed. Her voice cracked, and then came the words I had never expected to hear. I do not want your money, Dad. I want your respect. I want you to look at me one day and believe I finally became the daughter you deserve. Her words hit me harder than any of the insults she had thrown at me before, because this time they carried the weight of truth. For the first time in her life, Olivia was not begging for comfort or cash. She was begging for dignity. And I did not know if I was ready to give it. That thought stayed with me long after I ended the call. I sat alone in my study, the folders of documentation spread across my desk like an unspoken verdict. Nearly $1 million. Each line item proof of love, sacrifice, and labor. Each receipt a fragment of my life given away, piece by piece, so my daughter could stand taller than I ever had. Yet now she stood humbled, stripped of the illusions that money could buy her respect or happiness. She was finally asking not for more, but for something I had once thought she would never understand. Dignity. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, the house quiet around me. I thought about Catherine, Olivia's mother, and the promise I had made at her bedside all those years ago. Catherine's hand had been frail in mine, her voice a whisper. Take care of her, Richard. Give her everything she needs. I had taken those words literally, pouring my time and fortune into our daughter, mistaking everything she needs for everything she wants. In the process, I had raised a woman who believed love was measured in dollars, not presents. Perhaps that had been my failure as much as hers. Weeks passed, and I kept my distance, watching from afar as Olivia trudged through the reality she had never known. She worked shifts at the diner, endured stares from old acquaintances, and lived in a small room that made her gown-filled closet look like a memory from another lifetime. There were nights I drove by, unseen, just to catch a glimpse. Her shoulders were slumped, her walk slower, but there was something different in her eyes. Hardship had stripped away her arrogance, leaving behind something raw, unpolished, and real. One Sunday evening, she called me again, her voice quieter than I had ever heard it. Dad, I made it through my first month. Rent is paid, groceries are covered. I even saved a little. Not much, but something. For the first time in my life, I paid for myself. She paused, and I heard the tremor in her breath. It feels good. I did not respond with praise. I simply said, that is how it should feel. But when I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, my chest heavy with a mix of pride and sorrow. She was learning late, painfully late, but she was learning. By the second month, Olivia had changed. Her weekly calls shifted from complaints to reflections. She spoke about coworkers who struggled to feed children, about customers who tipped generously or cruelly, about the exhaustion of scraping by. She began to understand, really understand, what life looked like without someone carrying her. One night she said, Dad, I used to think people who worked in diners or cleaned rooms had failed. Now I know they are stronger than anyone I used to admire. They are doing it themselves. And I never did those words pierce deeper than any apology could. She was finally seeing what I had wanted her to see her whole life, the dignity in labor, the honor in sacrifice. Still, I held back. Respect was not something I could hand her with a single conversation. It had to be earned, built slowly, brick by brick, the same way I had built my business from a rusted truck and 2 hands. It wasn't until the 3rd month that the moment came. She arrived at my house unannounced, her eyes red from crying, her diner uniform still wrinkled from a shift. She stood on my porch, hands trembling, but her voice steady. "Dad, I do not want your money. I do not want your pity. I want you to believe in me again. I want you to look at me and see more than the spoiled girl who ruined everything. I want to earn back your respect, even if it takes me the rest of my life." For a long time, I said nothing. I studied her face, the same face I had memorized in a wedding gown months before, now stripped of makeup, raw and honest. The same eyes that had once turned away from me at the ballroom door, now looked at me without pride, without expectation, only hope. Finally, I stepped aside and opened the door. "Come in," I said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once written checks for her tuition, where I had counted bills to cover her trips. Now it was bare, except for the coffee cups between us. "Olivia," I said slowly, "respect is not something you ask for. It is something you build. You will not get it back from me in a day." But you have started. Tears filled her eyes, but she nodded. "Then I will keep going." I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers, calloused fingers against skin that was no longer soft from luxury, but hardened by work. "I have always loved you, Olivia. That never changed. What I need now is to see the woman you can become when you stop expecting and start earning. Do that, and respect will follow." For the first time in years, her tears were not of entitlement or anger. They were of understanding. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "I will not let you down again." The months that followed were not easy. She stumbled, she struggled, she made mistakes. But she kept working. She paid her own bills. She apologized without being asked. Slowly, she rebuilt not her wealth, but her character. And for me, I learned too. I learned that love without boundaries is not love at all. It is weakness disguised as devotion. I had given Olivia everything, thinking it would make her strong, when in truth, it made her dependent. Only when I stepped back did she begin to stand. The story of my daughter is not one of revenge, though it may have begun that way. It is a story of justice, of accountability, of the painful but necessary truth that love must sometimes be firm to be real. As I look at her now, months later, serving coffee with tired but determined eyes, I see not the spoiled bride who dismissed me, but a woman finally beginning to understand what dignity means. And in that, I find my peace. If you like this story, subscribe and tell us about your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next one, click on the box on the screen.